Knowing how to safely care for or transport your equipment is part of the job. Now, we don't mean you need to know how to rebuild a swing motor or an injection pump, but everyone should understand some basic safety rules about equipment maintenance and transport.
If you're going to do a decent inspection or any extensive work on the machine, it should be thoroughly cleaned first. This makes it a lot easier to spot potential problems. Well-trained and qualified technicians are good investments. Some contractors try to save a few bucks by hiring some kid off the street to do grease jobs and check fluid levels. The poor kid usually doesn't know the ring gear from the pins and bushings. Any money the owner saves in wages, he loses several times over in poor maintenance and downtime. Plus the fact that the things that should have been repaired on the machine weren't even noticed or reported. That can make the machine unsafe to operate. Before you begin to work on any of the hydraulics, make sure there's no static pressure left in the system. That means releasing the pressure in the reservoir as well as cycling all of the control levers with the engine shut down. Just make sure no one is standing around the machine when you cycle the controls. Make sure you remove the key from the ignition switch and put a "Do Not Operate" tag on the controls or door. Also, turn off the master switch before you start to work on the machine. It can really spoil your day if somebody punches the starter while you're cleaning a bird's nest out of the radiator. If you have to do any work on the undercarriage track system, make sure you carefully relieve the pressure from the hydraulic track tension mechanism. Check the operator's manual or the manufacturer's service manual for the correct procedure. Correct track tension can affect machine efficiency as much as it does safety. Tracks too tight accelerate wear and waste power. Too loose and you stand a chance of stepping right out of the tracks when you make a turn. That could easily happen at a critical time and have serious safety consequences. Always keep the tracks properly adjusted according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Wearing eye and face protection while you work around these things is more than just cautious. It's an OSHA regulation. Radiators contain pressurized hot water. Batteries contain acid. Hydraulic fluid, diesel fuel, and transmission fluid can all cause burns, blood poisoning, or blindness. While we're on the subject, we need to remind you of just how dangerous it is to work around high-pressure fluids. If you should ever be struck anywhere on your skin, or even through your clothing, with a pressurized spray or stream of fuel oil or hydraulic fluid or any other liquid chemical or petroleum product, drop everything and get to the doctor. Petroleum products that get into your bloodstream can cause blood poisoning and even death. Discovering a pinhole leak in a hose or tube by putting your hand over it is an invitation to serious trouble. Always look for leaks with a piece of paper or cardboard. One of the nice things about newer machines is the coolant recovery bottle. You don't have to remove a hot radiator cap to check the coolant level. If you don't have this luxury, be very careful about opening a hot radiator. Always do it slowly to release pressure, and be sure to wear face protection. Manufacturers seem to be getting more conscious of making it easier to check things like fluid levels through the use of sight gauges. Make sure all the cylinders are in the correct position before you check the hydraulic reservoir level. Otherwise, you'll overfill or underfill the reservoir. Either one of those situations can lead to trouble. A decal on the machine or the operator's or service manual will tell you the correct position for checking fluid levels. An important item in any inspection is to look for high-pressure hoses or tubes that may be crushed, frayed, or partially chafed through. In addition to failing at the most inconvenient and critical time, they're also a leading cause of fires when they spray flammable liquids onto hot engine surfaces or electrical connections. Here's someone with a story to tell about electrical fires.
I rolled into the shop one night about 7:30. It was starting to get dark. We had a 166 Bantam parked in the yard. I could see a yellow flickering light underneath the operator's cab. So I ran over there and investigated quick, and we had a fire going. The operator had left a master electrical switch on. And I ran to the shop, which is only a couple hundred feet away, and grabbed a fire extinguisher, and I put the fire out quick. But if I wouldn't have pulled in just when I did, we would have had the machine burn up.
Of course, Reisman Excavating now has a standing rule about making sure the master switch is off when the machine is left overnight, either on the job or at the shop.
That's a good safety feature from vandalism and kids jumping on equipment when you're not around. You know, all of a sudden a kid, if the master switch is on, all he's got to do is hit that starter button and away he goes. And we've had that happen already on a machine that didn't have a master electrical switch. I've been called at 2 o'clock in the morning by the cops and said, is this your machine out here on this job site? I said, yeah. He says, well, how do you shut it off? Because he says the kids have been out here playing with it and it's running.
After the fire incident, Reisman equipped his shop and machines with additional extinguishers and had someone come in and put on a short course on how to properly use an extinguisher. Knowing something about the nature of fire and how to handle a fire extinguisher could save hundreds of thousands of dollars in property damage and untold human suffering. Expert advice in this area is often available from your insurance company, your local fire department, or the people that sell and service fire extinguishers in your area. It's not just loose or frayed wires that can cause a fire. Welding on a machine that has grease or oil built up on it can also be a serious fire hazard. You should always have a fire extinguisher rated for oil and for electrical fires nearby when you have to do any welding on a machine. That's even more critical when you're welding around the engine compartment. Good old common sense will tell you that you should never smoke or have any open flames on a machine that is being fueled. Never leave the engine running when you're fueling a machine either. Diesel fumes can be ignited by sparks from the alternator and other electrical sources. Around fueling sites, OSHA requires grounding and bonding, and the EPA requires spill containment. While we're on the fueling kick, it's a good idea to fuel the machine at the end of the day. This avoids condensation buildup in the fuel tank when the cooler, moist night air fills the space left by the fuel burned off during the day. Replacing worn or broken bucket teeth and changing pins on attachments are fairly common chores. Bucket teeth are extremely hard and rather brittle when struck with another hardened surface like the face of a hammer. Always wear eye and face protection when you change bucket teeth. If you have to hammer on a pin when you're changing a bucket or any other attachment, use a brass maul or drift pin to keep from mushrooming the head of the pin and to reduce the possibility of pieces of metal chipping off and striking you or anyone helping you. Never work on an engine while it's running. Fans have a way of sucking tools into them. After the tool has damaged the fan and the radiator, the fan spits them back at you with a speed you can only imagine after you've had your 3/4-inch drive handle remove a few of your front teeth. You probably don't get paid enough to go around looking like a hockey player. If you're in an area of the country where you sometimes use ether to help you start the machine, be aware of the fact that ether is both toxic and highly flammable. An old fishing buddy of mine used to work in northern Minnesota. He left a can of ether in the cab and it had a little leak. He was smoking a cigarette when he opened the cab door. There was this big flash and a boom. Said it singed his hair and blew his hard hat about 15 feet away. His safety glasses kept it from being a lot worse. He said he knows smoking can kill him, he just never thought it would be that way. He was real careful where he kept his ether after that. Jump starting is another area that can be pretty dangerous. Always wear face and eye protection as well as gloves when you do this. Batteries give off hydrogen gas that can explode. They also contain sulfuric acid that can blind and severely burn skin on contact. This is a two-person job that requires care to avoid serious injury. If you're jumping off another machine, make sure they're not touching. Even a machine with a swing-out battery compartment door can touch the other machine and create a direct ground before you're ready for it. Also make sure the battery's not frozen. If the battery fluid is frozen and you attempt to jump-start the machine, the battery will probably explode when you hook up the cables. Most machines have a negative ground, but you should check the operator's manual to be sure. If it is a negative ground system, connect the positive cable to the positive battery terminal of both machines first. Then connect the negative cable from the good battery to a good ground away from the negative battery terminal. Have someone else start the machine. When the machine is started, The negative cable should be removed first at both ends and then remove the positive cable. Now that we've got the machine serviced, we need to get it loaded up and hauled out to the job. Before you load, make sure the bed is in good shape and not covered with mud or grease. If it's wintertime in the north, make sure it isn't slick with ice and snow. After you get the tool and stick tucked in tight as you can to lower the boom height, set the swing lock and the park brakes before you close up the cab. If the machine doesn't have its own exhaust stack cover, it's a good idea to cover the stack for a couple of reasons. One, to keep any rain or other airborne junk out of there, and two, if the machine is turbocharged, the wind passing over the stack will cause the turbo to windmill. Without the engine running, the turbo isn't getting any lubrication, and the bearings will simply go away. There is no such thing as a cheap turbo. Most manufacturers provide tie-down brackets of some kind to chain the machine down for transport. Make sure you use good tie-down locations that won't break or slip under stress. But most of all, know the condition and rating of your chains and binders. The laws vary from state to state, and you may be required to use color-coded chain that the Highway Patrol can easily spot as they drive by. You'll never mistake a cop for the good humor man if he pulls you over to check your load. Last but not least, know how high that load is and write it down someplace and put it in the cab with you. Know the routes you're going to travel, and if you have any low bridges or wires to be concerned about. The OSHA rules that apply to clearance for electrical wires when the machine is working also apply when the machine is being transported. Know about bridge or road weight limitations. If the machine is over width, you may have to have an escort and flags or extra lights and a permit. Local law enforcement agencies can usually answer all those questions with a single phone call. I suppose there's a possibility that we didn't tell you a single thing that you didn't already know. But even if we just reminded you of some of the things you've known for years and sometimes forgot to practice, then we've done our job. Our hope is that you arrive at retirement age with all your arms, legs, fingers, and toes, and eyes and ears, and any other part of you consider worth keeping in good working order. You do that and we'll feel pretty good about what it took to put this program together for you. Stay healthy and work safe, you hear?